All right, so now we're going to look for inverses. So remember, an inverse is an operation that when we apply it to our given value, we get the identity. So the first thing we need to know is what the identity is. So in multiplication, the identity is 1. So we need an operation within rationals where under multiplication, when we apply it, we get 1. So 3 multiplied by the inverse is going to equal 1, and our inverse in this case is 1/3. Note this is inverse, even though it does end up creating the fraction. It's a little bit unintentional. So our inverse value is 1/3 here. All right, so now our operation, we've got this cross, and x cross y is given by the max of xy. So our identity is going to be max of x and the identity, and that needs to equal the max of the identity and x, and both of those have to equal x. So we're looking for the identity here. It's not the identity is equal to this. So to find the identity, this is what we want to have happen. Well, so if our max value has to be if our max value has to be x, then my identity value needs to be 0. Okay, so now I want to find the inverse of 7 such that max of 7 and the inverse, or the inverse and 7 is going to equal my identity element, which is 0, but I'm finding the max of 7 and another number. So the maximum is never going to be 0 if 7 is in there. So there is no, so the maximum of 7 and the inverse, to write this out in math terms, is always going to be greater than or equal to 7. Therefore, x inverse does not exist. So there is no inverse in B. All right, we're looking for the inverse of x with natural numbers under star, and star is given by x minus y. Absolute value of x minus y. So again, my identity element here, what I'm looking for is going to be 0, because x minus 0 is x, or 0 minus x is also x. So therefore our identity element is 0. All right, so let's let y be our value of x inverse. That means x minus y has to be equal to 0. Well, that means, of course, that y has to be equal to x. So that means that our x inverse is x. So this function, our, what we're using, star? Star is a self-inverse function. So x inverse is equal to x for all x element of our natural numbers. All right, now let's look at this last function d. We've got x in real numbers. Our star is x plus y plus x plus y. Sorry, xy plus x plus y. So we want our inverse to be x star x inverse to be the identity element. But first of all, to get the identity element, that means we want x star identity to give us x. So if we look at our function, x star identity is going to be x identity plus identity, and this needs to be equal to x. Well, if I solve out for my identity element, I'm going to get that e has to be 0. Also, looking at this, I can see that one of my values would need to be that e is equal to 0. Right? So now I need x star x inverse to equal my identity element. So x star x inverse, that's going to give me x times x inverse plus x inverse, and I want to get 0. So solving for x inverse, I'm going to factor it out. I'm going to get x plus 1 equals negative x, moving this to the other side. So x inverse negative x divided by x plus 1. All right, so that's going to work for all my x's that are part of the reals except for negative 1. Use my backslash, negative 1, because of course we can't divide by 0. All right, so those are examples of finding the inverse. Yeah, examples of finding the inverse.